Hi Dave, welcome back to Mate Night Radio. We're ranking every film ever made.
Hi Dave.
Today, we strap in and hit the dusty, unforgiving roads once again, not just for a revival, but for a prelude to chaos. This isn't just any road trip, it's a journey back to the roots of a franchise that painted our screens with turbocharged mayhem since the late 70s. In a world where roar of engines and the rush of adrenaline merge into a cold spectacle, a new chapter unfolds. This chapter promises to peel back the layers of one of its most enigmatic characters. It's more than just action, it's about survival in a ravaged wasteland, ruled by renegades and fierce warriors. With a legacy that has redefined the action genre, featuring breathtaking stunts and gritty storytelling, this film promises to be a visceral experience. Fred and I couldn't resist the allure of the engine's call and the siren of the desert. Now buckle up as we dive deep into this high-octane saga. Welcome to episode 8 of the Mate Night podcast, Mad Max Furiosa, Should You Watch It? We have no idea what the other one thinks. Fred has watched all of the films, I only watched Furiosa. On the count of 3, we're going to give our scores out of 10 based solely on enjoyment, not how good it is. Mad Max Furiosa, an explosive origin story. Rated out of 10 by the Mate Night podcast. 3, 2, 1, go.
6.2.
3.0. Generously.
Wow.
I was hesitating over whether...
Holy shit, that's so low.
Yeah.
Where'd you go from there?
What an atrocious film. What an absolute pile of garbage from the start to the end. Oh, what a bad film.
You know what? I was just... when you were prepping up there, we were trying to remember what the name of this was. Was it Fury? Because you kept referring to it as Mad Max. And I was like, I think it's Furiosa, so let's try and get that right. And when I checked, I looked and I caught the IMDb. Now, usually before any of these, I'll be like, I want the new ones. I want to make sure I'm not getting affected by what other people have said. And I saw in the IMDb, although they do go down, it's currently at an 8.0.
I saw that.
Which is...
ridiculous.
I was surprised by it. I was like, have I misjudged here? That's why I'm glad I wrote my score.
It's a joke.
Before.
I don't understand how it could possibly have an 8.0. It is a fractally at every single level, it is an appalling film.
3.0 though.
No, this is a bad.
It wasn't that bad.
It was awful, Fred. It was so bad. I spent the whole time like, what is this absolute garbage?
Okay.
All right, let's set up the film. Right, let's set up the film.
You set up. All right. By the way, spoiler free for Should You Watch It.
Spoiler free.
We will endeavour to be completely spoiler free up until a point where we're going to clearly demark.
Spoiler free. Right. Okay. So here's the premise of the film. Right.
Go on.
You've got the Mad Max universe, which I have to
the
take
Mad
with
Maxiverse.
Exactly. I have to take it with a pinch of salt because I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm actually quite excited to find out.
Sure.
I know it's a bit crazy. That's it. Post-apocalyptic. Fine. Somehow, inexplicably, there's an oasis in the middle of the outback, right? Yep. The whole world is falling. Like, even the most abundant places in the world can't sustain life. But somehow, right in the center of Australia, where no life can currently sustain, there happens to be this oasis.
Right.
Fine. Okay? Right? They don't want to share it with the poor people, right? They don't want the poverty-stricken, starving individuals to have any. So they just murder anyone that finds it.
Sure.
Again, fine. We're introduced to Furiosa. 10 years old, something like that.
Maybe.
A brave 10-year-old. She's out dangerously hunting for plums or something.
Yeah.
And she gets kidnapped, right?
Right.
The story is set up where Furiosa is taken by these bandits who've discovered this oasis, and they're going to find this oasis. And there's this really interesting dynamic where it's like, oh, Furiosa wants to go home. They want to find her home. How's she going to do it without them finding it out? I'll tell you how they do it. They just forget about it for the whole film. Within like 2 scenes, they just forget about it. They just don't talk about it again. Like 10 minutes after he takes her, that's it, just gone. The whole setup just wasted.
Well, okay, I don't want to try and navigate any spoiler territory here, but they do find they are on the search for the green place, as it's called. And then he finds the main antagonist, who ends up being quite involved with Furiosa. I mean, we can say played by Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth's character in this is the main antagonist. And he ends up having, I don't know, a better offer, should you say? Like, although he wanted to find this green place, this place of abundance, they end up setting up shop. He works in
gas. Oh, am I not?
I don't know. Without going into it, basically, like I don't. My biggest gripe isn't the fact that he kind of gives up on the idea of the green place.
No. That's just one. That's just one. That's just the fundamental plot.
Right. Okay.
This is just the fact that they seem to have set up a really cool idea and then just gave up on it.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. And we could argue all day on the intricacies of the plot, which are a bit odd. That is. Let me tell you. Turn my voice down. Turn the mic down. Let me tell you that if you're going to watch Mad Max, shall we just check? By the way, is my
just go. I got it.
Yeah. If you're deciding to watch any of the Mad Max films for the plot, based on my research this week, don't bother. You're there for the spectacle. Now, what did you think then? Let's say plot was out of it.
Yeah, which it was. Atrocious.
Plot, okay.
A god-awful, terrible plot.
Plot is one element
that
makes up a film.
Yeah, I agree.
You've given it a 3. Now, even with a really bad film...
Yeah.
And I wasn't the biggest fan of the plot.
Yeah.
What did you not enjoy any of the action scenes?
No. Right, okay. They went way too long. Okay, right. I understand. It's an action film. Okay. But the thing is, they looked bad. Like, they were bad to look at. They claim all these things about, we do 80% practical effects. And the 20% CGI sucks ass. And the practical effects don't look good. So all the action sequences look quite bad. Here's an interesting thing as well. It's shot not in 24 FPS, which is the standard frames per second that they shoot in. It's shot in much higher.
Okay. Yep.
What that means is that it looks like a video game when the camera moves around. So you've got bad CGI, you've got bad practical effects, you've got pointless action. Like, there's no reason for it to be happening. It's just mindless, constant action with needlessly ugly characters.
Yeah.
For ages and ages and ages. It's just dumb. The whole thing is just dumb, pointless, ugly chaos. It's rubbish.
Look, I don't want to give the game away on a later segment, but this is one of the better films of the franchise.
Is it?
Yes, and it is all exactly that.
It's so
That's
bad.
the hallmark of this franchise, is the just kind of... The plot doesn't really... Who cares about the plot?
Okay,
in a
fine.
post-apocalyptic world.
Let's abandon a plot. And dialogue.
It's just
and visuals.
I said crash, bang, wallop. That's it. It's someone having kind of a metallic orgasm.
Yeah.
A petrol-fueled, high-octane orgasm. That's what it is.
Okay.
All over your eyes.
Yeah. Just non-stop, pointlessly. And badly done as well. It's not even... Like, I would understand if, like, the practical effects looked good. Or the CGI looked good. I'm not generally a harsh critic of things like this. Like, I generally will just be convinced.
3 is just
it
for
was
some...
ugly.
3 is the worst.
3 is the worst I've ever done. Yeah.
Worse than either of us have done by a mile.
Worse than Empire Strikes Back.
Which is awful.
Which is a bad film.
Terrible film.
I've just discredited everything.
3 though. So
but
how did you... All right, talk to me, because here's something I want to understand. Our rating system, we're still kind of learning what we associate a number with. So how did you pluck out 3?
I was just thinking, like, okay, basically I was like, is there anything that stops it from being a 1? I was like, is there anything at all? And for about 30 minutes, Faye and I were walking home from the cinema trying to come up with reasons. And we genuinely just couldn't, right? Until I was like, okay, if you really take it as like the perfect target audience, you are somebody who likes like bikes and bondage outfits and just mindless dumb
ugly
shit. Ugly people, like, just like, if you like that thing, then like I guess it would appeal to you. But so like they've ticked a box for a certain taste. There's a certain like, this is what, if somebody likes this kind of thing, they like just like the word I came across was spectacle. It's like, okay, fine, I guess they got spectacle, but it could theoretically have been worse, but he'd have had to have tried. It was a bad film. I mean, come on, like, you don't expect dialogue to be good, right? But like, come on. Chris Hemsworth is like the least funny man on the planet. Yeah. He's just like, it got tired when he got to Guardians of the Galaxy and they did the same gag about 45 minutes straight. And now he's just doing this big, dumb, brute idiot, poor dialogue. Furiosa has 39 lines in the whole film or something insane. So it's like atrocious dialogue. Did you notice the dubbing was wrong?
No.
There were, near the start especially, there were moments where literally the video of them speaking and the voice didn't fucking line up.
Sure.
This is a Hollywood film. What are you thinking getting that wrong? So you got bad sound, you got bad visuals, you got bad plot. I mean, like, I felt bad giving this a 3 because I was like, this seems generous.
Right.
Furious. That's the only thing that's furious about this film is how I feel after watching it, after being subjected to 2 hours of it.
You know what? I'm trying to think. Why did I give it a 6.2 then? Yeah, I'm probably a bit high on that.
Okay, because you watch the other films, you get to explore a universe further.
Particularly Fury Road, which is tied to, obviously, Furiosa's in Fury Road, and actually seeing some of the mysteries of that film answered. Yeah. Kind of interesting. I don't... You know now, having spoken about it with me for a few kind of series, I'm a sucker for a built world. When there's an established story and people add new elements to it, for some reason that just resonates with me.
It's interesting.
And so there were things that were added to this film beyond what was in the originals, particularly Immortan Joe's kind of. So Immortan Joe's one of the characters in Fury Road, and he's also a bit of an antagonist in this one.
Would I remember? Could you describe him visually?
He's the one with the mask on his face and the white long hair.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, so his establishment, his area, and some of
Citadel.
The Citadel, that's it. And his followers, I guess. Some of the interesting things about that is built up from Fury Road, and it's added to. So I found that kind of interesting. It's
the intrigue of a prequel.
I guess Chris Hemsworth was probably having a bit of fun with it, which was fine. And I just didn't, you know what? For it to start getting below 6 for me, I have to feel like someone has taken my time. And I didn't I felt like this is fine. You know what? It's not fine, because if it was fine, it'd be 6.5. It's below that. Probably it was in the 5s. But I did watch. I will say this: one thing that helped it massively is I watched the older films. and I was like, these are better than the older films. Yeah, and so that, I think, it's all relative, right? So if I'm comparing it to those,
you should be comparing it to like every film, though, right?
Yeah, of course. But even then, I think maybe I'm just less of an extreme marker.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm thinking if we're going through every film in history, which we are.
Yeah.
Say a 3.0. There's
one of the worst.
One of the worst films in history.
You can get worse on it, but like, I mean, you'd really have to really try quite hard to make it worse.
I think I may have reevaluate how I start to mark them and be a bit harsher.
Well, I think that this is another one of those cases where it's exactly what you said, where it's like you've watched the other 4, and so you kind of I was really excited to kind of piece together the universe, but there were a lot of things where I was like, there is no way they're going to be able to explain this to me. Like, why did they remain in the outback? What's that about? Why not go near the coast where there's like consistent weather and like fishing and just like not having to survive the way they're surviving?
Yeah. One of the many mysteries of this franchise are like the fact that it's clearly set not too far from the apocalypse. It's within recent memory.
Okay, yeah.
And yet people decide to all live in the bush.
In an uninhabitable place.
And
currently.
often people who are living in these uninhabited places, like that is a staple of all films. Like after the first one, the first one takes place in the bush, but there's more towns involved. Okay. It's just after the apocalypse. And so there's still actually semblance of society still running. It's just getting a bit weird. And then by the second one, it's completely all over the place. And in every one, they all speak about, as if there's no... Yeah, there's a wasteland and there's no inhabitable area.
Well, you don't have oceans.
They all live
sea's just
through they all lived through cities.
Yeah.
This happened 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
It's all just gone.
And they've all just decided to move in the hardest place to live.
Oh, God, it's so dumb. Okay, fine. So there's no oceans, right? The whole world has to just be a wasteland.
In several of these films, they find there are oases.
Oh, right, okay. So
it was like, oh my God, I've never seen something like this. Yeah. It's like, Mad Max was in the police.
It's absolutely wild that they had the one oasis that seems to have survived this environmental apocalypse happens to be in the single most uninhabitable place in the planet currently.
Right.
Why is that oasis there? So that's inexplainable. I came up with a bit of an explanation as to how they managed to acquire what looked to be about 2,000 or 3,000 motorcycles at one point.
Yeah.
Which,
go on, what is it?
So here's my explanation, right? For whatever reason, they've decided they need to live in the outback. Now, you need to be able to cover distances. And so vehicles are incredibly important to survival. Yeah. And so they went around collecting them. And that's the only way I can come up with how what at one point looks to be an encampment of about 100 people ends up at a different point with CGI being about 3,000 motorcycles chasing a single person. Which, by the way, what a ridiculous waste of precious fuel.
The most bizarre choice out of the whole series is the fact that they went with the reliance on gasoline, guzzling they call it, on petrol.
So what's that? What's the situation?
Okay, so here's how the apocalypse happened. So the world became over reliant on fossil fuels, particularly oil, and then there was basically a nuclear war around the scarcity of this resource. Oil became more important than water. That's the idea. And then the apocalypse happened. You don't really see the apocalypse ever in any of the films. It's referred to, and maybe the odd flashback explosion. The apocalypse happens then, and then suddenly these kind of gangs start forming, and it's formed around this almost chrome, metallic, high-octane... Basically, everything is around petrol being as important as water as a resource. Okay. Starts getting called gasoline. And you just think at some point, people would be like, actually, we don't need cars. Yeah. We need to survive.
We need agriculture.
Literally all the way through. Yeah. It makes no sense. Yeah. And then the more they just get bigger and bigger. They get like the most fuel inefficient vehicles they've ever seen. And like
drive them for no reason.
As you can see in this one, so in one of the settlements in this film is centered around the production of gas, not gasoline, basically. Yeah. And that's kind of the closest we've ever got to seeing something like that throughout the films, where there's actually a place where they create. It makes it
okay. Bit of world building.
Yeah. But I've just throughout, I keep thinking like, why is it? Yeah, that's the choice, but. Surely it's like a House of Cards, this, where suddenly someone's like, well, I'd rather just have water.
Yeah, or weaponry.
Right. Weaponry as well. I mean, even then, like, bullets would run out.
Yeah.
Or it is a limited resource. It's a finite resource.
Grow some wheat so you can feed people.
So it's like an interesting idea where some guy got high and was like, it would be really interesting. What if we were relying on petrol? And then it was a funny thought. He smoked.
Yeah, and he was with that mate who takes it way too far.
A mate who happens to be an Australian director. He's like, that's a fucking phenomenal idea. And then, rather than just having one bad film, somehow everyone five shit films.
What were they thinking? Why are they all dressed like that, Fred? Why? Why?
You should see the first one. They're all dressed in leather.
Why?
The police force are all dressed in leather. Why? I don't know.
Why are they all wearing stupid chains? And
I don't know.
It's just, it must be so hot.
And they're all, so they.
It must be boiling under those outfits.
Immortan Joe basically becomes kind of a deity, and this is also not uncommon in the films where they have kind of despotic, megalomaniacal leaders, and then people following them. Which, fair enough. In an apocalypse, you would have cult figures rise up, but it's almost like this is happening hundreds of years later. Like it is within everyone's lifetime. So, like, why are they all acting this weirdly?
So walk me through the timeline here. What's going on with the films?
Okay, so post-apocalypse happens.
Yep.
And the first film, which came out in 1979, is set around 1985.
Immediately after the apocalypse.
So the apocalypse happens, and at that point, so 6 years after it's happened,
Okay.
you have the last vestiges of a police force, which is who Mad Max belongs to. And this police force in Australia, anyway, they don't really go outside of Australia in scope. This police force, they all wear leather, and they all have cars with big engines, and they go around basically stopping the biker gangs. And it's essentially like a sort of Wild West with petrol. That's kind of what it's like. And lots of leather. And all the gangs are really weird, and they all like...
Inexplicably ugly.
Incredibly ugly, and all kind of very sexual. Like they're all...
Gimpy, almost.
They're very gimpy. They are gimpy gangs, and the story is like odd.
It's so
odd, right?
bad.
It's one thing that you just think about those cult films of like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Where they're weird for weirdness' sake.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, this one carried on.
They got more of them.
They somehow... Like the first one is so bad. Like it's such a bad film. And you're like, why is this...
Why have they made another one?
Why have they made any more of these? Why was Mel Gibson a famous actor after? This should have been a career suicide.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a defining film.
So onto the timeline. So are all 5 films set in the same universe, in the same timeline?
Yeah, I did a little look into this. Yes.
Okay.
As far as I can tell. No one said differently.
And then presumably they're not in chronological order because we have a prequel. That's just
outside of that, they are. So 1, 2, 3, Furiosa.
Okay.
Then Fury Road.
Which presumably is the big tarmac road that they do the massive fight sequence on.
You'd have thought so.
It's not.
No.
Why the hell is it not?
That road is not in
It's just another
Fury
road.
No, that was just
a
a road.
road.
That was just some world building.
This must be the road. The road. The one good thing about this universe, they built a road.
Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it's because they go off road in Fury. They should have called it Fury Off Road. I don't remember a nice tarmac road. I did watch this quite recently.
You watched all of them. Thank you for that. I understand the suffering that you'll have had to gone through for this.
It's so bad. Like we did this for Planet of the Apes, and I was like, I'm really glad I watched all these films.
I'll do this again.
I am glad, in a way, like 20 years from now, I can say to someone I watched all the Mad Max films, and they go, "Oh, really? What do you think?" I go, "They're shit.
They are awful. Do not watch
They're
them.
really bad films."
Should you watch Mad Max Furiosa? Should you watch Furiosa?
No.
Don't watch it.
Should you watch any of the Mad Maxes?
Spend 2 hours with your family. Spend 2 hours. Spend 2 hours.
Call
your mum.
Spend 2 hours banging your head against the wall.
Do literally anything else but go to the cinema and watch this absolute garbage film.
No, I disagree. This one wasn't... it wasn't that good. It wasn't like...
Okay, we're 20 odd minutes in. Can we go into spoilers gut reaction? Because I feel like we need a little bit of that before the critics score.
Sure, I'm happy. So spoilers from now on.
One of the biggest moments I hated, right? Biggest moment. I absolutely hated this. And there are a few, right? Okay. Another interesting setup coming up. Ooh, this could be interesting. Okay. Chris Hemsworth's team. They are setting up an ambush. Okay, they're going to make it look like Gastown is on fire so that our team, Furiosa team, goes to fight them over there, and they've left the Citadel unprotected.
Right.
Great, but they know that that's an ambush. So then they set up an ambush for Chris Hemsworth. Oh, this is going to be cool. We're going to have a really cool battle where different plots and plans all come to a head.
Yep.
What happens, Fred? They do like dumb overlays and exposition and don't even show you the battle.
Yeah.
They just start talking and then do like the tackiest, worst overlays I've ever seen in my life. The film is so bad, I couldn't even tell that the 40-day war had happened because it's just mess the whole time.
Yeah, that completely passed me by. That whole sequence just meant nothing to me.
I was just like, what the hell is going on?
Just going right, and this is something that I wanted to point out with Fury Road when it came out, which is the one before this, which you haven't seen.
Yeah.
That came out to a lot of fanfare.
Fanfare.
So thoroughfare, but it came out and it was well received.
Okay.
And it was a very big film. It was like the blockbuster of
2015,
maybe.
Now, yeah.
And so it was essentially 30 years removed from the last one that came out in 1985. Big reboot. Tom Hardy's in it. Kind of reimagining, but an extension of what was happening before, which is essentially like a monster of the week. It's like an episode format with Mad Max trying to save someone. So that comes out, and I remember thinking, okay, I'm really excited to watch this, and went to it and was like, okay, I enjoyed it because people told me how much I needed to enjoy this.
Yeah.
But the more I thought back on it, the more I realised, like, I didn't really enjoy it that much at the time. I was just being easily led. And also, it was so unmemorable. Like, I rewatched Fury Road, as you know, recently, and I was like, I fucking had no idea any of this happened. It's literally a drive. Yeah. And that happens in every film. And I knew going into Furiosa, I was like, I'm going to have the exact same thing, where I will have no clue what happened in the plot immediately after. You've just told me about a sequence which I just watched this film. I watched this film like
I remember it.
And you were like, this 40-day war. And I was like, oh yeah, they did mention something about that. That's supposed to be like the climax of the film.
The climax of the film. Everything, all the politics comes to this moment. Furiosa escapes from the jaws of death, goes back, tells them about this thing. They're going to set up a counter ambush. Great. And then the god-awful editing. Do you know about the editing? Do you know anything about this? Right. The editing is garbage, okay? The dubbing doesn't match, right? There's this dumb overlay instead. They have recorded thousands and thousands and thousands of hours for this film, right? And they chose these 2 hours, right? The editor did, right? The battle, the counter ambush battle, the climax of the movie, we don't see it. They just do these tacky overlays that you could do on CapCut in about 20 minutes. It's awful, right? The editor is George Miller's wife, and Mad Max Fury Road is the first film she ever edited. And when asked why she did it, she said, oh, well, it's because if you got one of these guys who do the editing for the other action movies, then it would look like every other action movie.
Right.
Yeah, but yours looks like shit. Yours looks terrible. It's so bad.
Yeah.
What is she doing?
Yeah.
Why would you employ somebody who doesn't know how to edit?
Her interpretation of not being every other action movie is to have no action in the movie during the set piece. It was really it was really bad.
I never notice editing. Editing's not something I notice until we were sat in this film, and Faye, who also doesn't notice editing, went, what the hell was with those overlays?
Yeah.
And I was like, not only bad overlays, but bad overlays at the climax of the movie instead of the battle.
So explain to me what an overlay is.
It's when, you know, at the start of Apocalypse Now, you've got like, you've got two shots and you can kind of see one over the top of the other. And it's like, shows a kind of montagey sequence where you're seeing a few different scenes going off because there's not enough chaos in Mad Max as it is. No, like one shot doesn't have way too much going on anyway. What you need is multiple shots with too much going on over the top of each other because this is the climax of the film. And we want to make sure that if you weren't confused before, you bloody well are now. This whole movie is just a confusing garbage mess. I hated it. I was so angry afterwards. I was like, I need to vent this off. I need to record this episode now because every time I tried to think about how I felt about this movie, I just spiraled into an angry rant.
Whenever I come over to yours and Faye's still here and she says to me, I'm looking forward to hearing what you say about this one, I immediately know that you guys both hated it.
Really?
Yeah, because if it's a good one,
she won't say
anything. She'll just say like, oh, you're recording an episode, are you? But if it's a bad one, she'll be like, I'm looking forward to hearing what you say about this one.
I'm with her as well. I was like, I really hope that Fred loved this movie.
No, I'm questioning what I gave it, but...
It's so bad.
Was there anything redeeming on it?
That's what I was just about to ask you, Fred. As somebody who gave it such a high score,
6.2,
6.2, undeservedly high.
Yeah.
What were some bits that weren't well building that were redeeming about it?
Right. Okay. So we can go through the plot here. So
I've already explained the premise up to when she's kidnapped and taken by Chris Hemsworth.
All right. Some of the action sequences were all right. Like when the mum's chasing her, I did think literally during All right. The mum's chasing her, so she gets kidnapped, and they're going to take her back to Chris Hemsworth, who's at another little establishment that, far off into the desert. So the people from the green place need to stop them. They need to be like, they can't know about this oasis that's in the middle of the desert because no one's found it yet. We don't want to
share with people who are starving to death.
Yeah, exactly. No. Could do a reading some Marxism, really.
Yeah.
So let's get political here. So those aren't my views. So I thought that the actual chase sequence was fine. I thought it was all right. I remember thinking after her mum gets killed by Chris Hemsworth's character, and I was like, yeah, this is fine. It's kind of dumb, but the whole series is so dumb.
Yeah.
And we didn't really know about the Green Place from Fury Road, because in Fury Road,
it don't make any sense.
Well, in Fury Road, they're on a road to get back to the Green Place, because she basically steals all the wives.
So they acknowledge that it exists.
In Fury Road, you don't see the Green Place,
but they're trying to get there. It's there. Okay,
that's where they're trying to get. So Furiosa is basically the lead kind of driver of the war rig, which is the thing that her kind of
the big tanker that carries all the resources.
And her kind of lover friend,
another bad part of the movie
guy, that they drive. She becomes Immortan Joe's driver, basically, to get all the gasoline
or food, or
to do the exchanges. So she's like a big part of the Citadel.
Yeah.
Obviously, by this point, when we see her in Fury Road, which is a few years down the line, and in Fury Road, what she does is she kidnaps or sets free all of Immortan Joe's wives. So all of the wives that she was going to be one of.
Yeah.
She basically hides them in the war rig when they're going out one time.
We see that at the end.
And we see it at the end, yeah. So, and then the whole plot of Fury Road is her basically going off and taking a turn to go to the Green Place.
Right.
And taking these wives with it. And then they get chased by basically Immortan Joe's whole army.
So this was one of the things that I hated, that I wondered if it could be explained, was the ending.
Yeah, what did that mean? Yeah,
as in,
it would have helped.
But the whole movie was the premise of the movie from the trailer, from the start. The whole premise was Furiosa wants to go home. That's it. Furiosa needs to go home. That's right. Which, by the way, she had a lot of opportunities to leave it. Throughout her entire teen years, could have just taken a car and left.
Yeah. It made very little sense.
No sense at all.
And she also
why did she go back? Why did she go back when her mum died to save her, right at the start? So she had a chance to go home then, because her mum sacrificed herself so that Furiosa's mum sacrificed herself to let Furiosa escape, and Furiosa goes back.
I think that one's fair enough.
Okay, fine. So that's opportunity number 1, right?
Yeah.
I'll skip forward to opportunity 17, right? She's now in her 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
She's had access to weaponry, to transport. She's had full access to the facilities for years. She's had no reason to hang about this long. She could have gone back at any one of those points.
Yeah, and that's her whole character driving force is to get home.
Yeah, and she just
even when she escapes his lair. Do you remember when she was supposed to be Immortan Joe's wives, when she escapes there by shaving her head off and getting away from his big son, then she just decides to join the mechanic team rather than use that as an opportunity.
Go home.
We know there's precedence for people leaving, because we saw the albino who left at the start.
Yeah.
And she's much smarter than him.
Yeah.
She could 100% get herself some sort of...
just a vehicle.
Some vehicle.
There are literally thousands of motorcycles.
So I guess that she's playing the whole long con.
For no reason.
Of getting... But they don't say why. No. They just say, oh no, she's
going to hang about for 20 years.
Hang about, learn the trade, and then... But always hide that she doesn't have a penis.
Yeah. And the thing that gives it away is that she doesn't cut her hair and it grows long.
Yeah,
Like that was the moment where the fact she was a woman was given away.
That's it. I liked that whole sequence. I liked that fight sequence.
With the one that lasted about 15 minutes.
Yeah, the one where him and her end up becoming a team, basically.
Yeah, okay.
That was pretty fun. Although he, as a character, was literally the most shoehorned. Literally the first scene he's in, he literally walks in and they go, "He's the guy. He's the guy who's good at driving the war rig," and everyone's like, "Ooh!" And then he's literally, "All right, we're going on a drive." They surely could have built him up.
I'm just a driver.
and when they get through that big scrape, that massive fight sequence, which I will say, in my opinion, was good. I enjoyed that sequence. Okay. They get through it. She tries to kill him, but he manages to kind of one-up her and kicks her out. Mm-hmm. And he drives off. And then he turns around, stops, comes back, walks back. Pointless, whatever. And that whole scene where he's just like, "If I've learned one thing today, it's that me and you need to be a partnership." It's like, what? Where do you get that from, you fucking idiot? Like, all right, fine. If you're going to be like that, did you have to do the cheesy drive all the way up the road and walk over the
hump? He saw the hump and was, "I'll get over that," and then I'll walk
She
back.
literally just tried to shoot him in the head.
It's so dumb. There's more dumb stuff as well. It's just dumb from start to finish.
Dumb.
Okay, there was actually we talked about bringing questions for interest,
right?
Which I've got one which stems perfectly off of this.
Sure.
So before I do, let's just summarize. Is there any scenario in which you should watch Furiosa?
Right. If you enjoyed Fury Road, which I know you didn't watch, if you really enjoyed Fury Road, it's a perfectly fine follow-up where you probably enjoyed Fury Road for the ridiculousness of it. You're not in it for the plot. Mm-hmm. Spectacle maybe, as you say, is slightly worse, but I didn't really notice the editing that badly. And you answer some of the mysteries that aren't that interesting from Fury Road, but there's still, I guess, mysteries as to like the Green Place and her backstory, how she got her arm chopped off. So, yeah. If you really liked Fury Road, you'll probably.
But for everybody else on the entire planet,
don't watch this.
Do not waste your time. Don't waste your time. Please, just go to the gym. Like, just do anything.
Work on yourself.
Because don't work on yourself.
People don't like you.
Just don't make yourself worse by sitting through this.
Listen here, Kings. don't watch this fucking dog shit film.
Go and lift some weights.
Read a fucking book. You virgin.
Do anything. Do anything. Watch Mate Night content.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so question. It was to let me just pull it up here. Should action films like Mad Max Furiosa strive for more realistic fight scenes or prioritize spectacle? So really what I'm trying to get to here is, do you think that an action film is better having much grander but kind of dumb action, or much more realistic but maybe less grand action?
What's your favourite action film?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't. What's in contenders for a good action? I tell you what's probably the most popular, maybe, of the last sort of decade or two is John Wick movies. Mm-hmm,
yeah,
which is trades on realism, as far as I understand it.
So here's what I'd say then: if you like John Wick brought something new to the table. Like, action as a genre is very much crash bang wallop.
Yep.
That's literally what I said when we go through the ranking of films in a moment. So what John Wick did was this kind of gun kata, where it was almost martial arts with guns. So that's an interesting, and also I would add that John Wick has quite an interesting world.
Okay.
Like the whole idea of the weird secret society of assassins.
But on the spectacle against realism in action.
I don't think that you have to have either a realistic or an unrealistic action sequence for a film to be good in that category.
Okay.
What's more important is that a good action film brings new elements. So you have certain action films which go really over the top and provide stupendous explosions and completely unrealistic sequences. But if they do it in a way that feels original, then they'll get a lot more leeway.
From you, and bear in mind I'm asking specifically you here.
Specifically for me, I find that the action films I've enjoyed more are realistic ones.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, it's tough because maybe they're more martial arts films, but I
Yeah.
really love The Raid. And what The Raid had, so a lot of Indonesian martial arts in it. But then the second one ups the stakes, and it did have, like, those are unrealistic sequences, but they are grounded in they've got a grounding of realism in that it's a martial art.
The action itself is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what's like a really cheesy, unrealistic action film.
Well, you could go as far as Marvel,
maybe. Yeah,
Marvel's
Marvel,
very unrealistic action. It's like, you know,
and action set pieces that I've liked maybe are more typically realistic, like say Lord of the Rings, outside of the orcs. Like the war elements of it.
True. Much more interesting.
It's the stakes, the expectation on that I enjoyed more than the end game final fight sequence, which seemed more of like everyone gets their own go.
Loads of CGI, loads of quips.
So maybe good action can be unrealistic or realistic, but it needs some sort of raising stakes and making the suspense feel earned is really important.
Yeah, perhaps it's more, it can be unrealistic or realistic, but it kind of has to be within a certain, you wouldn't maybe want complete absolute realism where, like, you know, one guy punches another and then it's kind of fight over. And then you wouldn't want completely at the other extreme where it's just so spectacle based that there's kind of no substance to it. But as long as it's within a threshold of like, it's realistic and spectacle enough, then it's just down to the other elements. So it's like, are the stakes high enough? Is there like a good reason why we're having this? You know, I talked about in Furiosa how I was really excited for that fight where Chris Hemsworth's team,
right,
the Dementus guy, I think his name is,
the
teams that kind of set up this interesting political situation. I was quite looking forward to that action then. But the action, the very famous action in Furiosa, where it's on that road, the like 15-minute fight sequence, where they're battling for the truck, meant nothing to me because it just kind of felt like it came out of absolutely nowhere, and it was spectacle alone.
Right.
It was like, let's just give you spectacle.
Sure.
But like, where are these guys come from? Like, set this up just a little bit more. We made this truck last scene and introduced this guy last scene, and now we're on the road fighting for it. And it's like, this is just spectacle for spectacle's sake.
That's a fair point. I think that maybe more than any other genre, action gets very tired very quickly.
Yeah.
You have to really... And what a lot of people struggle with, I think, is successful action films, when they come out, maybe the action isn't particularly original, but it's the setting or the circumstances, and that's why they're successful. And then successful action films, almost more than any genre, will spawn lots of sequels, and they become very tired very quickly. And so it's balancing the originality of maybe the action and the originality of the concept, and realizing that if you do one and it lands, whether it's completely unrealistic or way too realistic, either or, you'll find that the audience is only going to really ride with you for one, I think, before you have to really change it up and bring something new to the table.
Yeah.
What a lot of people will do is they'll say, here's your sequel, let's say Alien. That's more of a horror, but the next films after it were action. So you had Alien and then Aliens, which is like a pretty basic, okay, we're just going to, this is how much trouble we had with one alien. What if we had an army of aliens? And that's a really common like sequel idea for action, where it's like you build up this antagonist or this character that's almost undefeatable, you defeat them, and then you're like, okay, what if we have 16 of them in the next one?
You have to ramp up the ridiculousness quite a lot to get a sequel, to justify a sequel out of it, and then it can quickly become way too ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. So
I'll tell you a good action series that I did like was The Equalizer. Did you ever watch any of those?
I think I watched. I don't know if I watched it all the way through. The Denzel Washington one. Yeah.
But that's a good example of one quite far at the realism end of the equilibrium, where it still isn't realistic. Like really, even though it's very much these are ex-military guys with special skills with guns and planning and plotting, and there's no one's throwing exploding spears at each other like in Furiosa. You could argue it's one of the more realistic action films, but it has to be at least somewhat spectacle to be worth your time. If it's completely realistic, The Raid, another one. These are all ones where like they're kind of on the realistic end of it, but to be good, you can't just have it to be completely realistic. It has to be a bit dumb.
With Mad Max specifically, that's just its niche though. I think, as we were saying, it's such a saturated market action, and they all pull from a lot of similar ideas, as with any genre, all right. But maybe there's less room for creativity, but you have to explore your creativity in different ways. Yeah. And quite often, let's say the action itself, there's very little variation between the scenes. Like it's one person punches another, one person shoots another. So how do you package it? That's where you get your differentiation. And what George Miller has done, and what the Mad Max series has done, has said, okay, we're going to give you your action, and we're going to package it as it's vehicular. We're going to make it
leather.
We're going to have this is you got to buy into this, and if you like this, we're going to give you more of it, and it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be high octane, and whereas other films which rely on kind of cars like Fast and Furious, they've got more ridiculous, but this is like post-apocalyptic, ridiculous, engine heavy. I guess that's the appeal of it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's sufficiently. Yeah, I didn't have an idea for the answer to that question beforehand, and I think basically it's just it's about how you package it, and when you get to sequels, you very quickly package it in too ridiculous of a way. The packaging needs to be convincing.
It's same with horror. Like that's a very similar idea to horror, where someone will have a really inventive idea for a villain.
Yeah.
Your Freddy Krueger's, your Jason Voorhees, your Pinheads,
Silence of the Lambs guys.
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins. No, not Anthony Hopkins. Hannibal Lecter, played by Anthony Hopkins. But, they'll be very creative villains made.
Yeah.
And then it's been a massive hit, and you're like, okay, how do we capitalize on it? And almost across the board, they get very tired very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, and they'll get tired, but they'll get sequels. They'll be bled dry. Like most horrors have like 10.
They must make a profit. That's the only way you can explain it.
That's because every Halloween you can just be like, okay, there's a recurring market for it.
Do you think it's like a community of people rewatching them all, and that's just it? It must be, because I've come in on episode 5 of the Mad Max world, and I couldn't stand to sit through 2 hours of it without. Like I've really needed to get today off my chest, Freddie. Yeah. Like I've been looking forward. It's been winding me up.
Yeah.
I could not believe what George did to me. George Miller being the director.
George has taken, we counted it, didn't we? George has taken 6 hours 45 of my life outside of Furiosa, right? Oh, outside of 2 hours of Furiosa. This week,
8.5 hours of your life on George Miller's absolute garbage.
And I want to say, I tried to watch the first Mad Max when Fury Road came out, because I was like, I'm going to watch, I've heard this is really good, I better watch some of the other films. I didn't make it through the end of the first Mad Max before. I was like, oh, this is kind of boring and weird. And then I stopped it, and then obviously did it for this thing. And I was like, I wasn't just a kid not enjoying it. This is shit. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I tell you what, right? If you've listened this far, like and subscribe. I want to know which ones you prefer out of the Mad Max movies. So why don't you give us a little ranking?
Sure thing, Jambo. So, this is every Mad Max film ranked. This week, Jambo, I watched every Mad Max film so that you didn't have to. from the 1979 original to the newly released Furiosa. As usual with Mate Night, each film will be scored out of 10 to 1 decimal place. I'll also provide a brief, spoiler-free overview of each film and recommend which ones are must-watch before going to see Furiosa. Which ones will those be? So, does that make sense?
Yep, looking forward.
So, I've kind of given a quite brief rundown of the films. If you have any questions, because I know you haven't seen them, and it might, make for some engagement for anyone who's interested in this series. But straight in at number 5, we have Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. This is the final installment of the original trilogy. So 3 original films came out, and this one continues Max's nomadic journey through the wasteland and sees him stumble into some mishap in a new location called Bartertown. This is a town that's run on pig feces, essentially, or the methane from it somehow. And it has kind of bizarre laws and customs, fight to the death scenarios, and is ruled by a despotic figure, which you'll be familiar with, having watched Furiosa. Not this figure, but you'll be familiar with that sort of format.
Yeah.
This case, it's Tina Turner.
Oh, right, okay.
Yep.
Brilliant. How long after the first one is this set?
This was 1985. I don't know when year-wise. They kind of...
But is it pretty much... Is it short term between film 1, 2, and 3 in the universe?
Yeah, Mad Max is the same Max, and he doesn't age that much. So,
yeah.
It's within 6 years is the films they came out.
Okay.
So, if you wanted to... They might want to stretch it a bit. They make him look a bit older in this, so maybe... If you're being generous, let's say 20 years between Apocalypse.
And is there a dome? Is there a Thunderdome?
There is a Thunderdome.
Okay, what do we think of that?
Interestingly, the Thunderdome. What do I think of it? You know the song Wild Wild West, I think it is, the Tupac song. No, California. No, it's not Wild West. California. Welcome to the Wild Wild West. This is about California. It's a song about California by Tupac. and in the video, they're in the Thunderdome for some reason, and it's the same set. That came out like 15 years later or something. So there's something.
That's hilarious.
The Thunderdome sequence. There's one fight sequence in the Thunderdome.
Yep.
All right. I don't want to spoil anything.
Spoil the Mad Max trilogy.
What if someone wants to watch this? My recommendation is you don't watch any of these films.
Don't watch any
before we get it.
Don't watch Mad Max.
There's a fight scene in the... All right, the Thunderdome fight scene. They have one.
Yeah.
It's based on an archaic rule where Mad Max he basically needs to barter in Bartertown with the leader, Tina Turner, and she wants him to defeat someone who's essentially running it through the shadows by... basically having a monopoly over the pig crap.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So Tina Turner manages to orchestrate this situation where they're going to fight in the Thunderdome, and that involves just having an altercation, and then someone goes, Thunderdome! And by the way, all of their laws and customs has like some weird guy come in and like recite a poem about
Yeah.
It's really weird.
I saw that in Furio. I saw like the kind of thing going on.
Doing that. He also like, at one point they spin a wheel for what sort of punishment you get, and he comes back again to talk about the wheel.
Okay.
In the Thunderdome fight, so not only are they in a dome where everyone can kind of climb around and see through, it's kind of like a netted almost dome.
Yeah.
So it's a big construct, sort of like the sort of stuff you get in playgrounds, which people can climb on, little kids. It looks like that, but massive, not that big. Also, they're on like bungee cords, which I didn't know going into it. I knew there was a fight in a Thunderdome, but I didn't know they fought like they're like springing about each other.
This makes as much sense as the paragliders they used to
so
fight
bad.
in Furiosa.
This fight sequence is dog shit.
None of it makes any sense.
Like the whole film was so bad. Like plot wise, you'd have hated this for plot. But what I will say, there was a pretty cool Tina Turner song at the start.
Okay.
Other than that, it was turgid. 4.9.
Turgid.
Give it a miss.
I love that.
I did say I put for all of these which ones I must watch before going to see Furiosa, and this one was not.
Yeah. Okay.
4.9, and that's the lowest score I've ever given anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 4, Mad Max, the first one, the genesis of the franchise. Max is a cop in a post-apocalyptic Australian wasteland where power and authority is measured in horsepower. Although there is one or two cool moments, in this cult hit, it is otherwise dogshite. I don't really understand how it spawned such a successful franchise. I didn't enjoy it. 5.1, don't watch.
Very good.
Probably better than the third. I actually originally had them the other way around, but I thought, okay, there's one moment in particular right at the end, literally the last scene is quite cool.
Okay.
And it's the only scene I'd ever seen from the Mad Max series before watching any of the films. I knew of this scene. I was like, that looks like a really cool film. And it is so bad.
It's a bad film.
Bad film. Weird. It doesn't know what it's going for. At least in the next one, so number 3, is all from the original trilogy, the first 3. Bad films.
Okay. Mad
Max The Road Warrior, which is considered the best by everyone else, and I would probably agree slightly. So the zenith of the original series for many, this follows a more hardened Max Rokitansky, who has embarked on his desert jihad and finds himself in a position where he could be an unlikely hero to a community in the desert. Something he does in Fury Road and in Road Beyond Thunderdome. Whatever, stupid names. It's always him almost getting in a situation where he finds a family, but instead he just goes off on the road again. Okay. And everyone left to remember how cool he was. Mel Gibson is cool. I mean, in this anyway. I mean, real life, whatever. And he's very handsome. So that's something. This one works better than the first. I did have a reason why this one is better, because it embraced the apocalypse more fully. So the first in particular is kind of in between, and part of that will be budget. Like, they could only do what they're within some sort of constraint. So whereas the first is supposed to have a semblance of society still intact, and that's part of the reason they almost have a police force in place, which are just leather clad.
Just well.
Yeah. This made the bizarreness feel more acceptable, and there was some bizarreness in this, I can tell you. It's still not very good. 5.5. Don't bother.
So a bigger gap between.
Yeah, we got 4.9 up to 5.5. That's the range that I went to.
All bad films.
All bad. Yeah. I really want to just say I didn't enjoy watching any of them.
Okay.
Like, I was there at all points like, oh man, I can't believe I'm watching
Appreciate
this.
the grind that you've put in.
Yeah, they weren't enjoyable. Okay, so the second then is Furiosa, the most recent installment prequels Fury Road, giving us a backstory for one of its more intriguing characters. The improvement in special and practical effects since the 80s have definitely added to the crash bang wallop nature of George Miller's vision. So he's going for action, and at least in the more modern ones, you've got modern technology, so I could kind of enjoy it slightly more. Like, in the plot-wise, you're not enjoying any of these films that much, but at least with the newer ones, it's stuff that's kind of a spectacle, whereas the spectacle in the old ones are like just old spectacle.
Yeah.
The plot has interesting wrinkles, particularly if you've watched Fury Road, as many of its mysteries are answered. Still, a mediocre villain and no real weight to any of the emotional pull of the plot means you're really just here for the spectacle, and I'd argue that the spectacle wasn't as spectacular as the next on the list. 6.2. Not worth going if you haven't watched Fury Road, and even then, you're not going to lose any sleep over missing it.
Nice.
And you would argue...
Post-discussion, I feel like you might even want to give a lower score.
Yeah, I would give a lower score, and it's actually reevaluating the next score I'm about to give. Mad Max Fury Road, number 1. The best film. It is the best film in the franchise, is Fury Road. I've rewatched it recently, and it was the one I disliked the least.
Yeah, okay.
Following on from the Mad Max Scrap of the Week formula, you've got a reboot 30 years after the original. No, not after the original, after Beyond Thunderdome. And in this, Max essentially ends up on a 2-hour road trip with an albino and another man's wives. Okay. Led then by this new partner in crime, Furiosa, the troop is once again on an impossible mission. Mission Impossible. It's actually marketed as Australian Mission Impossible, this. On an impossible mission against a faux deity and his army of monster trucks. While the story is, again, pretty dumb, it is maybe the least dumb in a series of dumb films, breathing life into a franchise that would have been better off dead.
Brilliant.
6.8.
Wait, that's a good review.
I don't even think it's a 6.8. I'll keep it as, because
that's
don't
kind
wanna
of
be too
what we do
effective.
for some reason.
But yeah, look, I've watched all these films this week, and I would have rather had my time back.
yeah, I don't blame
You don't
man.
need to do it. You don't need to do it. Other than to say
Look,
you've watched
if
them.
if you're trying to work through classics, right, and you're choosing between the Mad Max films or literally anything else,
Yeah, I'd have rather watched Citizen Kane.
again, really,
I'd rather watch
don't be ridiculous. Come on, Freddie.
Citizen Grain. I'd have rather watched again. Yeah, the one thing that I kept thinking, particularly on the original series, is how did this happen? How did we get to the point where this is not just some weird thing that people like have as an odd pub quiz question, like where someone's like, "Oh, what did George Miller make?"
Yeah,
Mad Max. Have you ever heard of Mad Max? Oh, it's fucking weird as hell.
and
Don't
not
watch
good.
them.
It's not
But
just
instead, we've got two. I mean, Fury Road's all right. It is all right. Like,
yeah, okay.
it's like it's dumb. Plot's dumb. But it all takes place on one road.
Okay.
Like, at least it's quite simple. And they're not trying to bite off more than they can chew.
Which creates a more immersive experience for audiences, CGI or practical effects?
Very interesting question, because I think you may be in a better spot for this because you kind of have more of an understanding on the effects of it. But what I will say is when Fury Road came out, there was a massive hoo-ha about practical effects. It was like the rebirth of practical effects based on Fury Road, which my understanding is there wasn't even that much. There was a bit of practical effects, but it was kind of CGI'd all over anyway. Okay. But this was a big talking point of it, was the return of practical effects and how important it is and how realistic they look.
What do you think, Freddie?
My thoughts are pretty much tied to what I hear, which is have practical effects and then put CGI over them. And that seems to be the done thing, and it seems to work quite well.
Okay. Can I give my take?
Of course. Yeah.
I think practical effects suck.
Right, okay.
And I think also CGI has the potential to suck. Right. I feel like maybe practical effects is perhaps a bit too broad for me to say that with what I'm talking about really is like when a film tries to pass off like a horror film, say, tries to pass off effectively theater level costumes and makeup to actually be immersive and realistic. So really the film that I'm thinking about are like The Exorcist, things like that, where it's just practical effects. For me, that doesn't work. That's not good at all. Like, it's like people pretend that they like it, right? People are like, oh, it's practical. Yeah, it's pretentious is what it is because it's bad, right? It doesn't actually look like what you might think it would look like if that happened. And so it's bad, right? If you want to go and watch something like that, go to the theater. Right. If you want to watch a movie where they try as hard as they can to immerse you in a fake reality, don't put like dumb fake stuff all over, right? Just spend your budget on actually half decent CGI and it will make a half decent movie. Now, I understand you cannot do it without accompanying it with a base of practical effects, but I feel like people put way too much emphasis on practical effects being as good as they're not as good as people say they are.
Well, maybe I think while I'd agree with you in some areas, like there's clearly a limit to practical effects, but maybe you're undervaluing like the majority of stunts, say, is essentially practical.
Okay, that's right.
Like I just don't want
and
to
like
pigeonhole.
flamethrowers, I suppose. And like I would rather a real flamethrower than a.
For sure, I think by my understanding is that you mean if you're going for a real experience of creating something unrealistic.
Creating something immersive.
Creating something that's not there, essentially. Then
I think
using
people just like practical
effects
effects a bit too much sometimes, and I just think like I'll watch a film and people will be like, "Oh, those practical effects were great," and I'll be like, "Did you at any moment genuinely think that could have been real? Really?"
So bringing it back to Mad Max is an interesting point because when I said people came out and were like, "Oh, it's almost entirely practical effects and George Miller has brought them back," I remember quite quickly after that were the first few videos being like, he used practical effects, but it's a lot of CGI there. There's a sequence in Fury Road where they ride into a sandstorm and it's the whole war, the whole regiment, I don't know, all of his army of truck wielding riders are driving into this storm with all of their bespoke little explodey gadgets, and they're swinging from like stilts, all of this interesting stuff in rust buckets, right? So that's happening, and there's clearly a base of practical effects there. Like people are actually swinging from stupid stilts. Someone did a video of what it looks like without CGI, and it's like shit. So I think that the idea is, when it came out, people completely misunderstood how much of it was practical effects. Yes, he did things with practical effects, but he basically made it he's CGI overlaid a lot of it. And you didn't watch it, and you have your problems with the visuals, which we'll go into, but Fury Road has good visuals. Like, it would score very highly. It was a real experience. It was a spectacle. Visually, I'd give it a very good score.
Fury Road.
Furiosa, I probably would as well, but
we'll get to that.
We'll see how that does.
We'll get to that.
So, practical or special effects, like actual films that rely on practical effects and kind of make a point of it, I like The Thing. Where, yes, it doesn't look realistic, but they've basically created an entity purely through practical effects.
Yeah, but I just don't think that, like, I love The Thing. You know I love The Thing. But I think that we convince ourselves that vinyl records sound better than digital.
Yeah, I get what you mean there, and I agree.
And it's just not the case.
But I think it's more the charm. Like Princess
that's what
Bride
I mean.
as well.
That's what I mean. But I don't think that. I think that people falsely equivocate charm with quality.
Sure.
And so they'll go like, "Oh, well, it's great because it's practical," and it's like, no, it's charming because it's practical.
Sure.
You know, like I found The Thing very charming.
Yeah,
you know?
And I like things with, you know, part of my childhood, things like The Princess Bride with the rodents of unusual size. Remember those big rats that are in it? The Labyrinth, which
Awful.
is all
garbage, rubbish, all of it.
It's all
and
puppets.
people will tell you it's good because it's practical. No, it's bad.
Yeah.
Go to the theater if you want to see that. Like, if you want to watch a movie, I understand if you're from the 70s, if you're a movie from the 70s or whatever, you know, fair enough. You don't want to use crappy CGI. I think that maybe what I'm discovering is practical effects should be used for things that are actually real. You know, like fire and things.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to make something that isn't actually real, don't try and use practical
visual
effects.
effects usually work better, yeah.
Because they just don't, like, and more to the point, don't try to convince me that it looks better, because I won't believe you for a second. It never does, and I just think it's pretentious.
Fair enough. All right. I get you.
But CGI has the capacity to be awful as well.
Well, particularly, I mean, you were saying 70s and 80s. I mean, computer-generated imaging really took off, like, in the 90s, really.
Right, okay.
Like, and late 90s was when it started to come in.
Like Pixar and stuff, is that kind of...
So, yeah, Pixar, the first fully...
Bugs Life on it?
No, Toy Story.
Okay.
Was the first fully computer-generated animated film. For everything was computer generated, and that was like late 90s, I think. Pretty sure. But you had CGI in place, but just in part at those points, and it was bad.
Yeah, okay.
And then you kind of went through that early 2000s stage of, like, have you ever rewatched the Quidditch scenes in Harry Potter? Yeah, I have. Like, I
love Harry Potter. It's so charming.
But it's to be honest, massive strides have been made through the Marvel films. Like, give them credit. They've really
their CGI is outstanding.
Humondously. Humendous. Yeah.
I think if you try to do too much CGI, you know, unless you're doing an animated film, this seems to be the thing that I've picked up, is people don't like films that are like when Marvel does like whole fight scenes in CGI, where no one's actually doing anything. I can kind of get that. And equally, I think that what people don't seem to talk about enough is that when you try and when you reverse that And instead of taking a realistic fight and doing it entirely CGI, what you do is you try and take something that doesn't exist and try and do it in practical effects. That can be the exact same problem. And really what you want to do is do CGI when you can't do it in real life, and do practical effects when you can do it in real life, and stop telling me that you should do anything else.
Yeah, fair enough.
I gotta say, The Exorcist, right? Like, okay, fine, at the time, whatever, right? But now, you're not going to tell me that anybody in 2024 watching it for the first time is going to be like, oh my goodness, that's so convincing.
Yeah.
No, it's charming.
It's charming.
It's charming.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell.
It's
charming.
It's one of those charming films.
Charming films.
The Exorcist. It's a charming film.
Exorcist. Yeah. Why is Furiosa American?
Okay, so are you talking accents?
Accents.
Okay, walk me through what this accent scenario is here for me.
You might not have been able to tell as well in Furiosa, but we're in Australia.
Yep.
You know that.
I recognise that.
The green place where Furiosa comes from, the people there are Australian.
Yep.
In Fury Road, so the film before, Furiosa is introduced. She's American. She's played by Charlize Theron, who has an American accent. She's also, I think she's South African originally, all kind of mixed. But anyway, American accent. Does an American accent. I checked up on this, and at the time when it came out, George Miller said, well, in the apocalypse, people would have migrated and everything would have got a bit fuzzy.
To the outback.
To the outback.
Naturally.
People would have gone to the Australian outback in the middle of the apocalypse. Where do I want to be? Some Americans would have gone over to the Australian outback. This is where I'm going to set up shop.
California, Yosemite, it's uninhabitable.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Australian outback.
Someone from New England is thinking, you know what?
I could never sustain life.
Yeah. So, anyway... Furiosa is an American accent. It's not really explained.
Migrated.
But the decision was that no one has accents. Accents don't matter in the Australian outback. Yeah. 10 years after there's been an apocalypse.
When there's been a fight over a lack of gasoline, everyone's kind of migrated across the planet for literally no reason at all.
So this happens, right? And then... okay, you can accept that, but then you watch Furiosa, and she's from this green place where they have Australian accents, and she grew up with them, and then she ended up growing up with Australians from the age of 10, say. Yeah. She grew up with Dementus, who's as Australian as they come.
Yeah.
Immortan Joe, all his team are Australian. So...
her
accent is American.
So is there an excuse that we can come up with that we could buy for that answer? Here's my thinking. Like TV. You know, maybe like old...
What was she watching?
Was she watching Friends or something?
Well, we know it wasn't too far removed from this current time. Friends probably just finished airing.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that the green place had outside of food sustenance and abundance was cable television.
Was one box set of Friends, which is why they all wanted to leave.
Can you imagine if at the end she'd been American all the way through and then decided, actually, to be honest, I don't even like the Friends accent.
Yeah, I think you could argue that maybe there was some way that she was consuming media within the universe that happened to have American accents or something, but even that's a stretch if she grew up with... Like, did we hear the accents of her mum?
So that's the thing. That's what I was trying to remember, because I only thought about this after. I thought, what was her mum's accent like? A lot of the women from the Green Place, because they're in Fury Road. I didn't end up speaking to you about this, but in Fury Road, they're trying to get to the Green Place, as we discussed, and then they do actually get there, and it turns out that the soil went bad and the water turned poisonous and stuff, so there isn't a Green Place anymore.
Right.
So she ends up going back and realizing, oh, it's gone. As you said, it makes sense. Why it was there in the first place.
Loser! Idiot. That's what you get for taking 20 years to take a car from a place that's literally built on vehicles. You idiot.
So she gets there, and she basically runs into all of the remaining people who are alive there, and they're living as scavengers. And they're all Aussie. Okay. They're like, oh, good to see you, Furiosa. Like, they're not just Aussie, they're like the most Aussie people. They're the most Aussie people you've ever met. And then I'm just like, how did she... Okay, fair enough. Maybe her mum was American, but even then, everyone else she's lived with past the age of 10 has been Australian.
Yeah, okay. It's just going to be an audience. It's just going to be a target market thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
It's just like, make the good protagonist, make them as relatable as possible.
And we've got a history of bad accents in Mad Max. I mean, Tom Hardy does the worst Australian accent.
I feel like Australian is quite an easy one to do as well, right?
I guess for some actors, not for Tom Hardy. I actually saw an interview with him before he was going to do Mad Max. He'd been cast, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not looking forward to. I can't do an Australian accent."
Really?
Yeah, he mentioned it. And so what they did when Fury Road came out originally, people were like, God, he doesn't have much lines. I was like, it's because he's not doing an accent at all. Right. He speaks very low to try and hide it, but it is like
very obviously.
My name is Max. Okay. I'm out here in the desert, the wasteland, and it's so grumbly. You're like, maybe he's got a slight Aussie inflection, but
okay.
You got Mel Gibson.
You got to respect that. Say in comparison to Furiosa, where they did nothing to hide the accent whatsoever, apart from just give her no lines.
Yeah.
That was their solution.
Their solution was, let's just make her not speak for 15 years.
When she's not taking cars as well. She's just inexplicably inactive for 15 years.
Just going, and she's just going by the war rig to take a piss in a jar. And it was like, that was a bit weird that you're doing that.
Yeah, we got a perfectly good toilet. We've got the infrastructure to build a bionic arm, right? Use the toilet.
Right, one thing, I know this is a complete sidetrack, but on that scene, I think she dealt with that magnificently, to be fair. You know how, so she's mute.
Yeah.
One of the guys who's like supposed to be her superior finds her behind the war rig taking a piss.
She's hiding things.
Because she's essentially, she's hiding that she doesn't have a penis because they all think she's a boy.
Yeah.
And so she takes a piss like round the side away from everyone. And then she comes back up with a jar. And he goes, what are you doing? And she was like, wiggles the jar of piss.
Yeah.
They all think she's mute because she's pretended she can't speak. They think she's a mute boy who's taking a piss over here. And you go, why don't you just take a piss with everyone else? And then she just goes...
She just
for anyone who can't see, she literally just shrugs her shoulders and he's like, oh, all right. And I was like, to be honest,
that's the end of that conflict.
That's completely resolved that. I even thought, like, to be fair, if anyone does that to me when someone does something weird, I'm just like, fair enough. Completely normalised.
So she was under there to smuggle things, and then he caught her smuggling things, and what
was she smuggling?
It was something under the vehicle. She was putting something under the vehicle.
She was just having a piss.
She was under there to put something in the vehicle or under it.
Do you remember what it was?
I can't know, but it was probably that stupid fucking seed that she was carrying around with her everywhere else.
Stupid seed.
Randomly pull out of her hair.
Oh, God, I know we're on a separate section, but don't watch this film.
Don't watch this film. Please. Film. Should you watch it?
Yeah, there you go. Watch that.
That's a much better use of your time.
So, accents, I didn't understand. Mad Max, generally. Tom Hardy's are pretty bad, but I don't think there was a suitable explanation for why she was American.
I don't think that we were even capable of coming up with an in-universe one either.
Don't think we were close.
If the cause of the fallout was because of a lack of gasoline, but the reason that people have unexplained mixed accents is because everyone migrated.
Yeah.
Not only is that like not great at explaining it, it's actually completely directly contradicting the whole premise of the series.
And he also had like...
He's flying to the Australian outback.
He has one, and they were in this... I don't know if they're in this one or in Fury Road. I think they're in Fury Road. He's got people who speak a different language now. Like in the outback, they speak a different language.
Interesting.
And this was part of the thing that I read where it's like, yeah, of course you'd have different accents. I mean, you even have people who've made different languages. And you're like, it's been like max 50 years.
Yeah.
And that seems inconceivable because Mad Max is like 35 or something.
And they wouldn't just recreate the American accent with like single individuals. Like, fine, yeah, maybe some areas develop a dialect that kind of ends up becoming a language and an accent. Fine, right? But that's not the same as saying then that Furiosa just happens to also have picked up an American accent from literally nobody else in the film.
No one in the world.
No one in this planet, which apparently has no oceans.
No oceans.
It's just the outback.
There's also, one more thing, which isn't to do with this, but is to do with Fury Road, which I hated. Is that at one point, right, so they get to the green place, which isn't green anymore because it's dead. And Mad Max has helped them get there. And they're all like, oh, fuck, well, what would we do? I guess we just load up these bikes and go in that direction and we ride until we get to a point where hopefully we get to the coast. So they know that there's a coast and like, hopefully we do it. If we just head straight in that direction. And then she goes, we've got 160 days worth of ride in fuel.
Okay. That seems like enough.
For riding, driving a motorcycle, not walking.
Yeah.
We've got 160 days worth.
That seems like enough.
And then they start to go on their journey. Mad Max goes, oh, no. And he stops him and said, look, we both know what's going to happen. Well, he says it in an English accent. We both know what's going to happen. If you keep going over in that way, you could drive for 160 days, and we know you're still going to see salt. And I was like, no, they won't.
No, they won't.
160 days are going like 60 miles an hour.
I feel like you can cross the planet.
That's so far.
100.
By the way, Max is someone who used to live on the coast. He was a cop.
How the hell did you get here?
What? Is that why he's mad? Because he's completely
He has
lost
no
his
understanding of distance. Oh, that Max, pretty mad, isn't it? Doesn't seem to understand distances very well.
How did People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive begin?
What the fuck has that got to do with this?
It's a bit different.
What the fuck has that got to do with anything to do with the last 2 hours of discussion?
Right. Do you want to know?
Maybe you should try asking the question again.
All right.
Maybe try making it relevant.
How did People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive start? Mad Max.
Oh, really?
No, I was just saying Mad Max on it. No, it does kind of relate. So,
okay. So do you want to set up this time properly?
yeah.
Okay.
Are you happy with that question?
Just go for it.
How did People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive begin? In 1985, People magazine were going to do an expose. In 1985, People magazine were going to do an article on Mel Gibson, who at that time was starring in things like Beyond Thunderdome, the third Mad Max film. And when they were writing the article, someone mentioned his name in the People magazine office and said, we're doing something on Mel Gibson. And one of the girls went, Mel Gibson, he's the sexiest man alive. And from that, the article then became titled The Sexiest Man Alive, Mel Gibson. And ever since that date, People magazine have done probably the world's most famous Sexiest Man Alive edition. Yeah. Cool, that, isn't it?
That's pretty wild. Which edition have you got up to at the minute?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. Yeah, I thought
that is
you know why I found it interesting. I watched the first one, and one of the only things I did think, because Mel Gibson's well famous, and I've known of him for ages. Yeah, but I did think, Jesus, he is a really handsome bloke. Like I've not been giving him credit for how handsome he is.
He's a Braveheart guy, not
Braveheart. Yeah, that's
Braveheart.
him. And also the guy who got in trouble for a massive anti-Semitic racist rant back in... Yeah, we won't go into it.
We'll leave that where it is.
Surprisingly, he didn't get recast in the reboot of Mad Max, even though he really did put emphasis on the mad part.
Okay, it's time to wrap this up with our critical score ranking. We're going to rate Mad Max Furiosa out of 10 in 7 more categories: plot, character, dialogue, performance, visuals, sound, and genre realization. Here we want to determine how good a movie was, and so we do take the age into consideration. We have 2 minutes per category. First off, plot. Plot is a sequence of events which take place in the narrative. Do they make sense? Are the stakes high enough? Were there any surprises? We have 2 minutes to agree on a rating out of 10. Go.
All right, I'm going to 2 minute. What is the max? What is the Mad Max,
What is the max
ranking that the plot will get?
Oh, God, it's atrocious.
So let's start from 5.
Okay.
It's 5, I'd say, is the absolute.
I'll tell you what, let's give a little context for anyone who's just tuned in. Why is the plot so bad? It sets up a plot and then just does nothing about it for the rest of the film. None of it makes any sense. The world building is bad.
World building's all right. That's the one thing I'm all right on.
The world building, because none of it makes sense.
The world building's all right if you like the world, which I don't.
But it doesn't make any sense. I feel like world building to be good, like you need to not have the entire populace take place in the outback for literally no reason. Why is there an oasis just in the middle of the most uninhabited? Like none of it makes sense.
Which stuff makes sense? Okay, they don't want to share the oasis.
Fine.
So they kill everyone who sees it.
Fine.
That's all right.
Fine. So there's a couple of murders that make sense. 2 out of 10.
Her character arc of getting kidnapped and then wanting retribution that makes sense. The way she goes about it is bizarre.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay.
They set up some interesting stuff and then see none of it through.
Okay. Yeah. There's nothing in the plot that's good, really. Like I'm happy to go with a 3.
Yeah. Okay. We'll give it a 3.
3.
Okay.
The thing is, I think that me and you, I know you're just trying to shoot me in the head, but me and you should be a team.
It just don't make
sense. I don't know much in this world. What are you doing, man? Get out of there.
Just leave.
But I'm quite confused about your accent.
Yeah. Imagine how disappointed he was when he found out she was a girl. Next, we have character. Character is a collection of beings within the narrative. We have 2 minutes to agree on a rating out of 10. Go.
3.
3.
I think at least the characters were outrageous, ridiculous. Like that. Does that mean it's because do they get more marks just for being completely stupid?
Return to the question: how good are the characters on the paper in Furiosa?
They are. They're different. They're very different.
I can't see it getting higher than a 5.
Furiosa's a pretty good female character. Like if you read it, if you're a woman who wanted to be in an action film, and you're like, well, this is quite cool. I've got like a female lead who's actually kind of interesting, and she's not too sexualized.
Yeah,
she's
I guess
all right.
this kind of comes under dialogue, but they didn't. The character didn't speak, which is a bit of a problem with the character for me.
Yeah, there's a reason, I guess, because. I guess the reason she didn't speak is because they couldn't work out why she had an American accent.
The world's biggest sulk. Your mum's dead. Let it be. Leave it where it is.
Well, I don't think character can be as bad as plot, because at least the characters were diversely interesting.
Yeah.
Not they were ridiculous, but they kind of came out of the mind of quite clearly a maniac. So maybe give them something.
Like a 5? Is that a bit generous?
Nah, give it a 5, because that must be one of the higher scores, right? Character.
Okay, that settles it. Mad Max Furiosa's characters rated out of 10 by the Mate Night Podcast. 5.
Nice.
Possibly a high score. Next, we have dialogue. Dialogue is the lines spoken between the characters. We have 2 minutes to agree on a rating out of 10. Go.
Do you have it in you to make it epic?
It's like their ad section.
You know what? I remember watching the trailer for that, thinking that's such a shit line.
Yeah,
like, what weirdly bad.
And it was clearly written for the trailer.
And I was like, you know what? I remember watching the trailer, thinking, how are they going to make that line good? There must be a way that because they've built it up to the point where this is a really important line.
Yeah.
So it must be really.
I'll tell you what they did. They put it at the end of like a needlessly long sequence about her deciding whether or not to kill him. That just
I
where he
hate
like
that
he
whole-
like.
Yeah, I really
I mean, this is
hated that
dialogue
scene.
section, so we shouldn't linger. But what
And
the
performance.
hell was
I
that?
did not like Hemsworth in
We're
that
not on
bit.
performance yet.
I know.
This is back to plot, but dialogue,
so bad.
on to dialogue. I mean,
Dialogue was really bad.
I don't. I mean, was there anything?
Was it
at
worse
all?
than the plot?
Was it? Yes, I actually think it
Think it
was.
was.
I actually think this could be one of our first 1 out of 10s because like there was nothing about the dialogue. Every single line spoken was just absolutely appalling.
I'd say maybe a 2. I feel
If
like,
this doesn't get what gets a 1 if this doesn't?
I think we'll see worse films. I really do. When we're basing it on the fact we've seen really good films so far, and we're only starting to do modern films, which are bad.
To summarize, we are going to give Furiosa a 2 out of 10 in dialogue because we believe that there may exist a film with worse dialogue.
Yes,
Yet to be watched.
there will be. Some horror film dialogue is worse than this.
Who was bad? Okay, cool. 2 out of 10.
2. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this score. It's going to be hilarious. Okay, next we have performance. We have 2 minutes to agree on a rating out of 10. Go. Okay, here's where I'm going to say that it's one of the redeeming things.
Mm-hmm.
Furiosa's character, according to George Miller, was not allowed to speak anything because all of her performance had to come through her eyes. Now, she did look pretty angry at points. So, 2.
She did have some expressive eyes, I guess.
Okay, forget about Furiosa. Was there anything good in the performance category?
I think Hemsworth is
Not funny.
no, it is bad, isn't it? But is it really, really bad?
Yeah, okay, I hear you.
It's
Hemsworth is like a 4 or 5.
Yeah, at least he looked ripped.
Yeah, okay, I guess that comes under performance a bit. He did look good.
Yeah,
A bit weird when they
I feel like they
tore his nipples off, but
bit weird. Like the thing is, though, with him is the nose.
yeah.
Why if you're gonna make him ugly, make him uglier, I guess,
Well, everyone else is ugly.
or just keep him handsome.
But anyway, we're on performance.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Immortan Joe, Furiosa.
Everyone else, other than
fine.
Furiosa and Chris Hemsworth.
I think it's not as bad as the dialogue and the character. I didn't like Hemsworth's bit at the end where he's basically saying how he doesn't care about dying. I thought performance-wise that was kind of rubbish.
Oh, this is atrocious.
Other
yeah.
than that, like,
I would feel like it was a little generous to give it a 5.
okay.
But I mean, potentially be persuaded.
What's 5? 5's like, yeah, that's kind of bad.
It's pretty, yeah. 5's
4
not
is
good.
like, that's bad.
That's very bad. That's a bad performance.
2 is there aren't many worse.
But you've got to take every performance into consideration. And like the whole cast in The Citadel, everyone in that was like painfully bad to watch. Like the 2 sons, the guy who ended up becoming legend, like those performances, the guy in the suit, it was all
Give it 4.
unimaginably bad.
Give it a 4. We'll mix it up.
Okay.
We're learning quite a lot about the lower numbers with this ranking because we've been doing.
We've never done one.
I think me and you would say, having done quite a few rankings now, that we're pretty confident with what a 7 or an 8 feels like.
Yeah.
But what does a 2 feel like?
What's
a
an
3?
8 is great.
8 is great.
8 is great.
7's good.
6.5.
6.5 is it's all right.
6.5 is kind of middle of the
It's
road.
all right.
It's fine.
Yeah.
6 is getting not great.
6 is like meh.
Yeah. 2 is bad. 2 is bad. 2
2 is really bad.
2 is like, I don't know, maybe something worse exists.
Yeah.
I feel like that's 2.
Yeah, we need to have as
1
few...
is like, there is nothing else is worse than 1. You know, just like nothing else is better than a 10.
Yeah. The one we're talking an elite club of terribleness.
Next, we have visuals, CGI, costume, and makeup, and cinematography. Costume and makeup, and cinematography. We have 2 minutes to agree on a rating out of 10. Go.
Well, cinematography bad. Visuals, some of it all right. I don't think we could say, like, this is...
Give me a ballpark for your head right now. Ballparking. Between numbers.
between 6 and 8.
6.
Because the effects.
The characters looked
all right,
ridiculous.
doesn't it? Sometimes,
overwhelmingly, the characters looked ridiculous. The FPS thing, right? So they shot in a higher FPS, and so it always looked like it was from a video game.
Yeah,
didn't look realistic, right? That was a big problem.
I didn't find that as jarring as you did.
The CGI, there were some atrocious moments. There were some moments where it was like, that looks like a beginner's project on CGI.
Well, you know what? If you want to take the reins on this one, I didn't mind looking at it. But
that's a 6.
Yeah, so maybe it is
That's not an 8. That's not an 8.
That's not great.
That's not great. I didn't mind it.
6 is mixed.
I was able to... I like that. Yes. I was able to look at it, was what you said. That's not 8. You just don't want...
It's 6 is mixed.
6 is mixed. And it's... I guess...
I need to start doing the top. I'm literally just staring at a timer that I've not pressed start for the last 3.
A minute and a half into each discussion, I see you part a 2-minute timer on.
6.
Okay.
6 is
6
mixed.
6 feels generous, but we'll go with it. Next, we have sound. We have 2 minutes to go on a rating out of 10. Go. I think that the dubbing mistake at the start was a blunder that was bad enough to make me hate this film even more than I already did.
Well, we don't like the sound decisions for accent.
I hated the dubbing.
Sound is hard to do badly in there.
But if you could, I feel like this would be it. I can't remember the soundtrack.
No, I don't remember songs.
Okay. So that can't move it up or down.
So
the only bits of sound we remember, right, are the dubbing that doesn't match up with the actual speech and the accents.
5?
Could acting go into performance?
Yeah, 6. Is 6 mix? Is it a mix? Is this?
No, I think it's bad. No, I think it falls into bad. I don't think it makes it into 6. It doesn't mix. We haven't come up with anything good.
6.
Mix needs good and bad.
The sound in Furiosa is not mixed.
It's bad.
This is really good for my understanding of the ranking system. This episode.
So is it a 4 or a 5?
5, I think. It wasn't like... Okay. I didn't think... The sound didn't upset me.
I feel like you want this film to do better than it actually is.
No, I think it's still going to do pretty badly.
Finally, we have genre realization. This one is something like, how does it compare against the rest of its genre? We have 2 minutes to agree on a rating out of 10. Go.
All right. So this is interesting. Yeah. Genre realization is getting more and more interesting. The
studded leather jacket biker thing.
Yeah.
Or post-apocalypse.
B&M. Is that right? What's it called? It's the B&M. That's a shop.
That sounds like a genre of music.
What's it called with leather and bondage and stuff? S&M? Something like that.
Peace.
M&S. Marks and Spencer's and B&M.
What was it? Genre realization.
What genre is it?
Post-apocalypse is probably a big part of it.
Action's probably fun.
Action's a big part of it. Like
say action. That's easy to go. Is it an action film?
Is it like... Yeah, I suppose if you click on action on, say, a streaming service like Netflix, I wouldn't be that surprised to see it on there.
Yeah, I think it's an action film. I don't think it needs to be.
And how does it set itself amongst the action films? I mean, it's no John Wick or Equalizer or anything, or Raid.
No. And how does it amongst the Mad Max films? It's all right, but I don't like the Mad Max series. I don't know. It's not good, is it?
It's not great.
It's not 7.
The action was one of the only redeeming things about this film.
Some of the action was good, but
it's not,
you know what we said about when we spoke about action films before, and I said, you know, you get tired of the same stuff. Yeah. And whereas with Fury Road, I think that's a good action film. Whether you think it's a good film, I think as an action film, it's quite good. This is less. It's certainly less than that.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe if you say, I don't know, maybe 6.
Yeah, I think it's mixed, yeah.
I think it's pretty mixed.
Mixedy 6, yeah.
Let's mix it up.
It's a bit of a 6y film.
It's very 6y.
Mad Max Furiosa has now been rated out of 10 in all 9 categories using the Make Night system. We have ranked it the following: Fred's enjoyment, 6.2 out of 10. Jambo's enjoyment, 3.0 out of 10. Plot, 3. Character, 5. Dialogue, 2. Performance, 4. Visuals, 6. Sound, 5. Genre realization, 6. Giving it an average of 4.47 out of 10, which makes it the 21st greatest film of all time until further notice.
See, for one,
which, by the way, for anyone who's interested, is also the worst film we have ever rated on this show. Ever. In the history of this film. Show. Radio.
Until Fred Jambo Radio. This is going to be tough to beat. I can't see any of the classics doing it.
What got close was A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men.
Which I gave a 7.7 on enjoyment. If I gave that a 3.0, it would probably have come in lower.
Yeah. Where did Few Good Men really fall short? You know what? It's because we started giving it 2s for things that we didn't.
Visuals, because we were like, there's nothing.
We got annoyed at the gun twiddle scene and we gave it a 2. This is much worse. Furiosa is much worse.
Don't ever listen to the Cinephiles. It is not an authority by any stretch of the imagination.
That one wasn't even recorded. So there's people who would look at that and be like, why the fuck did they give a 2 for the visuals?
I look at our scores and I'm like, why the hell?
That's why I like it.
Okay, well, if you're still listening, then don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Make Night Radio.
Cheers, Dave.
Over and out.